Now that we understand how moving averages are created, let's talk about how we can use them in our trading and what benefits they bring to our trades. There are three ways that we can use moving averages. First, we can use them to help determine trend direction, whether we're bullish or bearish in a trade. This is a very common way of using the averages. In fact, it's so common that even institutions who typically don't use technical analysis will often use this particular tool in helping aid their decision of making a trade bullish or bearish. The second way that we use moving averages is as an entry trigger. This is a little bit less common. A lot of people use it, but it's a specific technique and less commonly used than maybe just picking a trend direction. And then there's the third way that we use moving averages, and that's kind of what I call my secret weapon with a trend. This is relatively uncommon. In fact, there's only a few books that even talk about this. And when I started using this in my own trades, I found a radical improvement in both the profitability and in understanding where to set our stops and where the trend was going and whatnot. So I'm going to teach you all three of these tools as we move through this lesson right now. So as we talk about trend direction, this is the most common way of using the moving averages. And what it does is it indicates whether we're bullish or bearish or maybe moving sideways in a trend overall. Here's how it works. The average serves as the midway point. Just think of it this way. If we're above the moving average, then we're bullish. If we're below the moving average, then we're bearish. Just consider it kind of like a threshold. Above, we're bullish. Below, we're bearish. And then what happens when the stock and the moving average are kind of moving together in the same price range? Well, that's when we're moving sideways. Let me show you what I'm talking about. Take a look at this trade here with Caterpillar, and notice as you look through here, we've got the three moving averages, the 10, the 20, and the 50. These are the exponential averages. And notice how we're above all three of the averages for the trend. The stock will slide up and it will come down, and it will go up and it will come down. But in each of these iterations, the trade is above, most of the time it's above all three moving averages. At all times, it's above the 50-period moving average. When you have a situation like this, we've clearly got a bullish trend. We're above the averages, we are bullish. Now take a look at this next example of First Solar, and notice how in this particular trend, we're below the averages for the entire trend. In most of the cases, we're below the 10, the 20, and the 50, but at pretty much all junctures here, we're below the 50 period with just a couple of short-term exceptions that maybe lasted for a couple of days or maybe a week or so. But for the most part, when we're below the averages, we are in a bearish trend. Now contrast both of these pictures with this next picture. Look at Rambus here as the price action of the stock is going up and down, and the moving average is going straight through the middle of the price action of the stock. Anytime you've got a situation that looks like this, where the averages are moving sideways, the stock is going up and down, but you're not clearly above or below the averages consistently, this is a sideways moving trade. At this time, the moving averages are not going to be a very good tool to use, and it's also probably not going to be a very good trend for you to be trading. So how do we use this tool? Well, here's what we want to do. Whenever we're looking at a short-term trend, we want to use our shorter-term moving averages. If you're a swing trader, you're going to want to be using those short-term moving averages, the 10, the 20, and the 50 period. If you're an intraday day trader, you're probably going to want to be using the shorter-term intraday averages, the 10, the 20, and the 50, on whichever time frame you're trading. If you're a longer-term trader, we can use the same tool, but we're going to use the longer-term moving averages, the 100 period and the 200 period. That will help smooth out the long-term trend. And again, if we're above the averages, we're bullish, and if we're below the averages, we're bearish. If there is one tool that I could encourage you to get acquainted with, it would be this tool, because in a trend, there's truly no better friend that you have than your moving averages. In fact, it's such a great tool and it's so simple that most people dismiss it and they don't even work with it that much because they think, oh, I got that, it's easy. But this is one of those tools that if you will use it, it will put more money in your account. It will put cash in your trading account. So get you comfortable with it, practice it, and work with it. This is a great tool for you to be working with. So let's talk about the second way we use moving averages as an entry signal. As an entry trigger, the moving averages create what we call a moving average cross. This is going to be an indication of either a buy or a sell signal. Now, the way this is created is we have to have at least two averages working together. You cannot get this signal with just one. So when people say, hey, what's the perfect moving average? Well, the answer is there's not a perfect. We need to have multiple moving averages. For me, I typically use three. I use the 10, the 20, and the 50 period. But you can get away with doing this technique with just using two. I would suggest suggest that you separate them a little bit. For example, the 10 period and the 20, or maybe the 20 and the 50. All right, so we need at least two averages, and here's what happens. When these two lines cross each other, when the moving averages cross, it is a signal of a new trend in that direction. Let's understand this a little bit better. Here's how it works. You've got the two lines. One's going to be moving faster than the other line. We call that the fast line. The fast line is always going to be the one with the lower number. So if you're looking at, say, the 10 period and the 20 period, the 10 period is going to be the fast line and the 20 period will be the slower line. If you have a 10, 20, and 50, well, the 10 will be faster than the 20, but the 20 will be faster than the 50. You understand the idea. Whichever line has the lower number, that's going to be the fast line. And when the faster line crosses the slower line, it indicates a change in direction. So here's how it works. When the lines cross up, it indicates a bullish trade. When the lines cross down, it indicates a bearish trend is starting. This is a very beneficial tool. It's very easy to understand, very easy to see visually. And again, much like just simply above the moving average and below is bullish or bearish, this is a tool that is so simple that most people tend to dismiss it. But if you'll use it in your favor, it will be one of the best tools in your arsenal for being a great trader. Now, let's understand which line is faster. We've already said it's the lower number. That's going to be the faster line. Oftentimes I get people ask me though, Jeremy, what happens when the slow line crosses the fast line? And the answer is it cannot happen. Remember, it's too slow. The fast line will always react faster, and you can always remember which one it is because it's the lowest number. Now, with this in mind, when do we use this tool? Well, we can use our shorter term averages for the shorter term trends. That would be the 10, the 20, and the 50. And again, we can use our longer term averages for the longer term trends, the 100 period and the 200 period. In both of these cases, we're using more than one average so we can get the moving average cross, and it will give us a quality signal. Again, if we're above the averages, we're bullish. Below the average is bearish. And then if the averages are crossing up, it's bullish. If the averages are crossing down, it creates a bearish situation. Let's take an example here and look at a picture. Look at Caterpillar over here in July of 2011, and notice how all three of these moving averages were crossing down. Actually, two of them were crossing down, and the 50 period was kind of coming up behind it here. Now look over here in November of 2011, and notice how in this case the averages were crossing bullish. This is a bullish moving average cross, as opposed to the August 2011 was a bearish moving average cross. And you can look in this picture here, and everywhere you see a big black arrow, that is indicating a moving average cross, and you can see how what followed from that picture is a follow-up trend. That was a pretty profitable trend in each of these cases. Now let's take a look over here at IBM, and notice how back here in September of 2010, look at how this moving average cross set us up. Back here, IBM was trading at about $130 a share, and by the time this trend was done, we're well over $170 a share. And you notice we did not have another bearish moving average cross during the entire trend that went on here for this entire picture, which was several months moving forward. Take a look over here at this example. This is your more long-term moving averages, and look here in February 2008, how the overall market, the overall Dow Jones, crossed bearish right here in February 2008. And what did that set us up for? Well, it set us up for the big sell-off that happened in 2008. The big crash that nobody saw coming? Well, look at right here. The moving averages were telling us several months in advance that the market was moving bearish. And people talk about the follow-up bullish market that came. A lot of people never saw that coming. Well, look what happened. As early as August of 2009, we had a bullish moving average cross with our long-term trends. And if you go back and you look at all of that picture, you see that we never really negated that trade. It was a perfectly obvious long-term bullish trend that was taking place. These are just a few examples of moving average crosses and how they can show us the indication of the trend as we move forward. And this brings us to my third and maybe my favorite way that we can use moving averages. I call it my secret weapon. What we can do is we can use moving averages as a support and resistance in a trend. Up until now, we've learned about drawing our support and resistance lines. We've learned about trend lines. And if you've been practicing it, you realize that it's not always as easy as it looks at first glance. But what if the computer could do the work for you? That's the benefit that we get when we use moving averages as a support and a resistance. Let me show you how it works. When we're above the moving averages will tend to work as a support. And we're below the averages will tend to work as a resistance. So we can use our short-term exponential moving averages in a short-term trade. And as the stock moves down towards the moving average will act as support. And if it bounces up, well, obviously that support was holding. Now, if the stock drops below the moving average, the average will flip over and it will start to act as a resistance. Let me show you a couple of examples. Look at this trend line that we've got here on Netflix. Look at this nice long trend starting back in February 2010. Well, watch what happens when I put the moving averages on it. Boom, there you have it. Look how similar those averages are to that trend line. But the averages started drawing immediately as soon as the trend started taking place. We did not have to wait for 2 or 3 iterations to really get that nice clean trend line. The averages started shaping it up. Typically, with a longer term trend like this, the 50 period exponential will be the one that lines out the best. Sometimes you'll even pull up a trade like this and you can look at the 100 period and the 50 period and they're just tracking right along with your long-term trend line. And the computer's doing the work for you. So if you look at enough of my charts, you'll find that oftentimes I don't draw a lot of trend lines. I typically will rely more on these moving averages to help structure the angle of that trend, and then I'll use the trend lines when I need to, but I let the computer do a lot of the work for me by the way of using these moving averages.